Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Write Scripts. I'm Micah Crowdy, the head of writing at Arc Studio, the best screenwriting app in the world. There's a link to check it out in the description. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, James Hurst, the internationally tolerated screenwriter. James is an award-winning screenwriter as well as being tolerated, and he's a showrunner, and he's worked on shows like The Hardy Boys, Wynonna Earp, Degrassi, The Next Generation, and a lot of other stuff. You can check out his IMDb for more. James, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be great. We're going to be talking about screenwriting. We're going to be doing some writing. But before we get into it, I want to know, everyone, where are you for the audience? And what are you writing today? What kind of project are you working on? And we always like to start with a little writer question to get the wheels turning because, I don't know, maybe you finished lunch, maybe you had a work day, or it depends what time zone you're in. This could be morning for you. So this question was inspired actually by a video that James made. You can also check out his channel. There's a link in the description below. But today's writer question I want to know is how do you make the reader feel what you're writing? And I'm going to get James's opinion on this in just a moment. But for the audience, where are you in the world? Because we got people all over the world. It's really exciting. I love seeing people from different countries here, as well as different states. And even James is from Canada. So we're already international.
That's right.
What are you writing today? What kind of project are you working on? Is it a script, a short film, or maybe some other creative writing project? Or maybe you're just at work and you're lonely and you want to hang out with us. And then third, how do you make the reader feel what you're writing? Today, if you're new, and for James too, because this is his first time, we're going to be doing 3 timed writing sprints. So when that happens, I'm going to put a timer up on the screen. I'm going to play some music. James and I are going to shrink off to the side, and we're going to be muted, and we're going to be working our own stuff, and you'll be working on your stuff. It's not prompted. It's just kind of whatever project you have, because we're all at different stages of different types of projects. So we're going to do those during the timed writing sprints. And then in the breaks between the sprints, we're going to come back together. We're going to chat. And James and I are going to answer your questions about screenwriting. So if you have questions about screenwriting, you can put them in the chat. And James and I will do our best to give you the answers that we can. And of course, if you're feeling it, like the video, hit subscribe, turn notifications, all that good stuff. And then during the second break, of course, we are going to show I'm going to show the sandwich of the week. And if you're wondering what the sandwich of the week is or why that happens, you're gonna have to wait to the second break. So for me, though, I'm in LA. I'm developing a new idea for a pilot. Actually, the past while on Let's Write Scripts, I've been doing a rewrite of a feature, but I finally finished that draft, and I'm very excited to not look at it for a bit. And now I'm developing a new idea for a pilot. So, James, you want to tell us where you are, what you're working on today, and I'd love to get your take on the question of the week.
Okay, well, thanks so much for having me, Micah. I am in Toronto, Canada. We're just recovering from a massive heat wave here. I know everyone on the East Coast has had that. It was the hottest I think it's ever been yesterday, so that sucked, but much better today. So, and what am I writing? Well, what I'm actually going to be working on, and it's good that you've created some time for me to work on it, is my wife and sometimes writing partner. Her name is Shelly Scarrow. Does not have a YouTube channel. I'm trying to get her on mine, but but she does have an Instagram channel. Anyway, she has a show in development, and which I am working on. So I can't say too much about it, but she's pitching it, and I'm helping her come up with some ideas. I'd be working on it as well. So that's what I'll be working on today. Not scripting, but doing some of that really important development work, coming up with some ideas and some character gifts and all sorts of fun stuff. So the writer question: how do you make the reader?
Wait, sorry, did you say gifts? Can we just go back to that for 1 second?
I know. It came out as gifts with a T.
Okay.
Sorry, gotcha. It did. I was like, oh, that sounded like he just said gifts, and I was like, should I pause? No, gifts. Yeah, it doesn't sound great coming out of my mouth. So the question: how do I make the reader feel what I'm writing? And I did do a video about this recently because I realized that it's something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And I came in with the idea that obviously show don't tell is incredibly important, and it's incredibly great advice. Show don't tell, as I'm sure you all know, everyone here knows, is one of the first things they teach you, one of the first things you learn. It's so important. But I think there's another level, like that's the kind of basics. And then you can go a little bit deeper when it comes to action lines or stage directions, if you prefer, I think we all say action lines now. Show don't tell applies absolutely, especially off the top, when you're going to say what the room looks like. But when you actually get into the scene, there's a hack you can use. I find neuroscience really fascinating only when it comes to writing. Only when it comes to writing, because I got 6% in math, no joke, with a tutor. So anything super scientific, I can't handle it. But I was really inspired by the book, The Science of Storytelling by William Storr, which if anyone's not read it, I highly recommend it. And I've subsequently, after reading that book, done a lot of research on how stories work and how they work on the brain. So there's this really interesting study I mentioned in the video from Emory University, where they had, and probably a bunch of you have heard of it, maybe you've heard of it too, Micah, where they had people go into an fMRI machine and read stories, which would be like really mad uncomfortable, right? Because you'd be like this. Anyway, what they found is that as people read, now this would be fiction, but it would apply for what we do too. As they read, let's say he turns a doorknob, the parts of their brain that are responsible for turning the doorknob lit up. And the scientists were not expecting that. What they expected is that the part of the brain that would light up would be just the reading and comprehension parts, but actually the part of the brain that is responsible for the action lights up. So obviously something stops it from triggering that action, but our brain neurologically is experiencing it, and it's creating something called a neural model. I think I'm butchering the term, but so in a sense, when you hack that, when you really realize that and start really using that for your action lines, you're going to be hacking the reader's brain in a way and making them feel the action lines. Now, that's a real fancy, highfalutin way to explain what's kind of just common, or maybe not common, but just good writing, So in an action line, when I'm writing it or when I'm rewriting it, I think about four things. I think about the first thing you want to do, and this is the most important. There's one thing you take from this, me blabbering. I hope I'm not taking too much time.
No, this is great. This is what people are here for. They want the real stuff.
Oh, well, good. I find this stuff so fascinating, and I assume everyone here is on board. And I'm seeing it. We've got greetings from the UK, Maryland, all over the world.
That's great. We got France. We got some fellow Canadians in there, all over the US.
And some names I think I even recognize too. So I won't call them out, but I think there's one or two names that I recognize. What was I going to say? Action lines. We were talking about the number one biggest thing you can do, the best thing you can do, is get rid of emotion words in your action lines. He's angry, he's sad, he looks angry, anything like that, get rid of it, because that's reporting, right? So that's just reporting something. And that's an example of show don't tell that's not a good kind of showing, not telling. So as opposed to saying he's angry, think of a behavior they can do that shows anger. I mean, it sounds basic, but it'll really elevate the writing. It really lifts it off the page. And again, you're hacking the reader's brain so that they're going to sort of feel it, So that's the number one thing to do.
I just want to
really,
kind of
really
say
lift your writing.
Interesting, the neural simulation, because there's another way. Because when I watched your video and I was thinking about this, like I kind of think about it as the theater of the mind. This sort of idea. And there's also, I guess, a second deeper thing here is like why this is important oftentimes is people be like, well, why are we talking about readers and not an audience? If we're writing scripts, these are supposed to be filmed. Why are we talking about the reader? And the thing on that is why it's so important is that like your first audience is the people reading it. You're actually the person, the people you need to impress with your script are agents, managers, executives, producers, and of course, all those people's assistants. And you need them to fall in love with your script, and that's what you want them to feel it. So that's why readers are important. But second, there's this idea where if you're reading a script, it's like it's the theater of the mind. What they used to talk about radio back in the day, that like you're watching this movie in your head. So when you're kind of talking about like experiencing it like that, I was sort of thinking about that idea of the theater of the mind, about putting the reader in the footsteps of in the shoes, of the character, and actually like going through it and experiencing it. And it's such a more visceral way of experiencing the thing than just from the sound.
And that's why, absolutely, totally agree. And I love that. I love that theater of the mind. It's such a great way to put it. And I think, to really make it active is, for whatever reason, is like I don't have an acting background at all. A tiny little bit of a stand-up background for a minute, but but I really think about the actors for some reason, I guess, because I think about the characters, right? So I find that that's where the show don't tell. And again, I sound like I'm pooping on show don't tell. I'm not. It's really important, but you want to go one level deeper into making them feel. So in a sense, like you're almost really writing for the actor in a way, writing for the character and making the reader. And I loved what you said too, because it's so important that we do have to get the readers to fall in love with our scripts. And Micah, from the industry, people will say all the time, for the read, for the read, for the read. So if people on the chat, I don't know if people have heard this term before, for the read, but it's very common. So you really want, like, definitely think about the viewer and the audience, absolutely, but you do really have to find a champion for your script, right? Someone's going to fall in love with it. So the more you can make them feel it and like they're there and they're present, the best kind of writing, I think the best kind of screenwriting is like almost like breath to breath. It's almost like you're really inhabiting the character. I like to call it like method writing. It sounds like super pretentious, and I hate that. I hate that kind of wanky sort of pretentious talk, but
pretension is welcome here. We're artists.
Well, we're all writer. We're all crafts people. We take this stuff seriously. The more you can really almost breathe like your character and really feel what they're feeling, the better. And then, because one of the things too, and I don't mean to add yet another point to me rambling, is that so much of the time, Aaron Sorkin said this to me privately. No, it was on his masterclass. It was on his masterclass. I
was going to add a mean joke about Aaron Sorkin there, but I'm not going to. No, I'm just kidding. Aaron Sorkin.
Do tell.
He's a fantastic.
Yes. He's a great writer. But he says something that I think is so great, is that the writers, when the script's not working, it's because what you had in your head just didn't translate. You know what I mean? So anything you can do to make what you feel translate on the page, and I think feeling is more important, right? The emotion is really more important. And like, so even just to pick a movie out of a hat that I think does such a great job of that is the movie Arrival from it's a few years old now, right? But you got a movie that's about time and about space and about aliens. It's very heady, right? And yet it's such an emotional feeling experience from the very first moment. You see her with the baby and she's like chasing the baby. It's so visual, but it's so feeling. So anything like that to really draw your audience, your reader in, so that they're there. There's no, like, you're just erasing everything else, because the thing is that, like, I have friends who are prose writers, and I'm sure we all do. I don't mean that like I'm flexing or something like that, but my friends who are prose writers, when you read their stuff, it's like, it is kind of about the magic of the sentences, and I'm not saying write bad sentences, write well, but it's really more about the effect, right? It's more about the effect we want to have with our scripts, as opposed to someone saying exterior coffee shop day, like, you know what I mean? We're telling stories and emotional stories. So anyways, I think I've monopolized.
No, I mean, one thing I was going to say when you were talking about actors is it's always interesting because there's a lot of debate in, screenwriting circles, especially on the internet, about like how much you should give the actor, like kind of telling them what to do. And one thing I always like, am I back, James? Is my internet going? Is this me or James? Let me know in the chat. As I'm waiting for it to come back. And
are we back?
Oh, James, I think maybe you
I don't know if everyone's still seeing this.
James, you froze. Are you back?
Oh, here we go. We're back.
Oh, all right.
We're back.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, James, you froze for a second. I wasn't sure if it was me or you. Anyways, sorry. I was going to say, with actors, when you're talking about like writing for actors, one thing I like to think about is like, what can they use? Like giving them something they can use. Like if you say like they stand there thinking about their childhood first day of school. It's like there's not much you can do with that. Like they just kind of like
Yeah.
they're just going to stand there sort of looking off. But if you give them little things that they can use, like that's how I feel like how you can actually tell almost. It's like it's show don't tell, but then you need to learn how to tell sort of in some ways. So it's like if you can give the actor something that like the actor can be like, oh, I can do something with that, you know, like that. Those are like the little nuggets that, you know, that can be really.
It's behavior, right? That's give them a little bit of behavior. And of course, we should be careful to say, don't be too prescriptive. You know, sometimes you'll see people, you know, they'll like get the micro gestures of running through the hair. Like we don't want to be too. So I hope it's such a nuanced thing, right? Because you can get too prescriptive, but if you can explain that, just as you said, giving them something to work with, and that's how I think, and maybe that just came from, you know, working with actors on TV shows. And I say working with them, it sounds like I'm on set all day. I'm not, because, you know, rarely you have time. I wish we had time. That's a bit of a Canadian thing too, is that we have small writing rooms, so we usually don't have a lot of time to be on set. So that's something I regret. It's
interesting. I mean, in the US also, that's something that used to be way more common. So like when I was a PA, like the first couple shows I was a PA on were sitcoms. And so we actually had like film night, you know, it was like every Wednesday you would go down to, it was like a multicam, and it was like filmed in front of a live audience. And so the entire staff, everyone's there on a Wednesday night, and everyone like pitching. And so it was like very cool. And like literally the stage is downstairs from the office. You walk down the stairs and you're in the stage basically. And nowadays, you know, if everything's filming in Toronto, if it's being written in LA, you could actually be on stage for some of the shows that people are, you know, writing out here because you're closer. Yeah. But like the room will oftentimes be done by the time they actually film it, and the writers aren't there. Anyways, this is great. I think we should probably take some of this energy here and actually take it into our writing. Let's do our first writing sprint. So we're gonna do the 15-minute writing sprint, which is like the chill warm-up sprint. It's shorter, and it's literally just to like wrap our brains around what it is that we're trying to accomplish today. And so I'm going to play some music. I'm going to put up a 15-minute timer. Again, James and I are going to shrink. We're going to go off to the sides. Don't worry, we're not really shrinking. It's just the videos that are going to be smaller, and we'll be muted, and we're going to do some writing. And again, use this 15 minutes oftentimes for the first sprint. You're reading back over maybe what you had before, just trying to get in that creative head space. And so here we go. I'm gonna play the music, get it going, and again, if you have any more screenwriting questions that you want to ask James, put them in the chat and we will talk about them after the writing sprint. So in the next break, if you have any questions, get them in there. We love talking about these kind of things, and we'll talk about them during the next break. So 15 minutes. James, you ready to do some writing?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Here we go. 15 minutes. All right, and that brings us to the end of the first writing sprint. The chill 15-minute, the lower the bar, no pressure. It's cool, whatever you get done, writing sprint. I want to know in the chat, let me know, how was that? First off, welcome to everyone who joined during that sprint. Let me know, how did it go? Are the muses with us today? Are they blessing our fingertips? Are we struggling? And if we're struggling, is there anything in particular? Do we have any screenwriting questions? Get in the chat, let us know. James and I will do our best to answer. James, how was that sprint for you?
You know, it was really good, actually, Micah. It was really good. You know, it's something about, even though all these wonderful people in the chat aren't here, you do feel, you get this energy. It's weird, right?
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, no, I felt really energized and kind of dialed in a way I haven't felt for a while. So
it's funny because I always feel like, even if they can't see my screen personally, they can see my eyes. And like, they know, like, everyone knows what it looks like when they're looking down at their phone, you know, like, that's just like such, everyone knows that. So
it's
like,
true.
it's the same reason why I like writing in coffee shops. I love having that energy of people.
The accountability. And I think there's something about other people doing the same thing you're doing. It's something about the brainwaves or something, which I know doesn't make sense, and because how could the brainwaves be hitting us? But it was great. I really liked it, and the music's nice and chill, and it's
awesome.
I really liked it.
Great. So this was some questions here in the chat. The first one isn't actually a question, but I think we can make it a question here. Anthea is revisiting an old script and wondering if it's worth the time and effort. And I feel like we've all had these things where sometimes we've had this old script that, like, you had a good idea, but you never quite maybe cracked it, or it didn't quite turn out the way that you wanted. And you're like, should I go back to this, or should I do something new? James, do you have any thoughts on when to make that call, of when something's worth opening it up again and digging around?
I feel I need more information from Anthea. Could
in general, like, have you had
okay, sorry.
Anthea can ask more things, but I'm just saying, like, in general, like, have you, when you look back at old projects, I mean, how?
Oh, absolutely. I'm wrestling with that right now, actually. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no worries.
But no, I just realized I am wrestling with that right now. I have a script that I wrote during COVID, a sci-fi, because I mentioned before Arrival, and which is like, actually that was inspiration. Like, I love that movie so much. But what I loved about it was very emotional. So I wrote a pilot, sci-fi pilot. It's not normally my bag. Like, I'm not a big sci-fi guy, but I loved how emotional Arrival was. So I tried to write something like that. Not about time, but about aliens. But as much as I tried to make it really grounded, near-fi and all that, I didn't pull it off. I still got up my own ass, if I can say that, and a little bit pretentious, and so it needs a significant rewrite. And I'm absolutely wrestling with that, Anthea. I don't really have the right answer, but I think, I tend to think of these things emotionally, and I think it's like, is it a relationship you want to go back to? Because it is a relationship, right? A script. So is this, Tarantino, who I know not everyone's a fan of, but, he'll talk about old scripts as ex-girlfriends, and sometimes you don't want to go back because you just don't want to go back. So I think for me, it's like how I feel about it. And I think for me in that script, the reason I've got a great take to fix it. The reason I personally have been dragging my heels about doing it, even though I had a producer, and that sounds like a flex. I don't mean that like, Warner Brothers is like, no, if someone was going to pay me, if someone was going to, right, like, I do it in a heartbeat. But it's like, well, I love this script. I just, maybe if you did this, maybe I'd like it better. I have a take that she loved. But I'm just reading Anthea. It was a semifinalist in a screencraft about Electron and a stockbroker. That sounds funny, Anthea. For me, it's like, I think because I wrote it during COVID, it has a certain pull for me that it's like a relationship I don't want to go back to. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's a high bar to go back into something, because there was some reason. I feel like oftentimes you get excited about a thing, and then you go back and you realize what like the problem was the first time around. Like again, that could be another relationship metaphor. And so unless you really, I think, have like a clear game plan, a clear understanding of like what didn't work and what could be different, then I would say generally I tend to move on towards
move on, right? Yeah, I think that's good advice.
All right, here's another question. Working on a fantasy script, but heavily based on ancient mythology. Recently, I've been wondering if I should make it more historical. What criteria should I involve in making this decision? So I'm going to say maybe this decision is whether it should just be a historical thing versus a mythology or fantasy kind of thing. I mean, really, it's up to you. Like, what are you more excited about writing? Another thing you could kind of try to think about is like, what does the mythology or fantasy add? And is that an important like aspect of the show, of the script? Because those can end up being very different kinds of things. But I don't know. I feel like this is kind of, it's like you got a go with your heart situation. I don't know, James, do you have any better advice than that? Than just
No, I think that's perfect. I think you got to go with your gut. If I'm reading it correctly, I did work with a student recently. I had a student in my course who had a similar kind of thing, you know, a similar kind of question. Like she had written something that was she's a fantasy writer, but then she was working on a new project. I won't share it because it's, you know, still private, I guess. But then she thought, well, what if I could change this and bring in a historical figure that everybody knows. Everybody knows this historical figure. And what I said to her, now this might not apply to you, but what I said to her is, one thing when you're in the fantasy or genre space, I don't know fantasy so much, but I know genre, Wynonna Earp, you know, which I did first season of, and I continue to write for it. Wonderful show, and that showrunner Emily's a genius. But one thing we found with genre is that mythology, and I say mythology in terms of series mythology, series lore, can be a lot for an audience, right? We all know that. You know, if you don't know the Witcher world and you watch it, it's a bit like, oh, do I really want to learn all this stuff, you know? So when you ground it in something historical that people know, let's say, that might make it a lot easier for you to sell it. And I don't mean sell it from financial. I just mean the reader goes, oh, I'm familiar with this, because, you know, when it is, let's say you've invented 5 races of people, mythical, we don't know who they are, and we're going to start to lose track. So if you can ground it in history, I think that's helpful, but that might not be what the question is. You know, I don't know, but does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah. Diana, several questions in here. I'm wondering if it's necessary to have a table reads for new scripts. How about getting someone experienced to read your scripts? And is it necessary to register the scripts, like with a WJ or something? Let's take these one at a time. Not necessary to have table reads for a script, but I think they can be very helpful. I mean, obviously, a lot of times that will depend on your access to cast, to actors to do it. But I know I have friends who are in writers groups that were basically based on table reads. That's what they did. They got together and they just had a group of them, and they would just do table reads of them, and they could hear them out loud. And yeah, that was very, very helpful. James, do you have any experience with table reads as a development tool?
Just what you just said. Yeah, you know, I've mixed feelings about table reads in terms of the professional context with TV, and I don't know if this is something you experienced, Micah, with let's say Better Call Saul or something like that. I maybe there was more. So table reads, I think, are wonderful. In the professional context, in my experience on Canadian TV shows, we'd always schedule them during lunch, and the actors were you know, they're eating lunch, and it was never great. But I still love them. I think in this context, what's so great, like in my course, which I'm not trying to plug or anything like that, we just read it ourselves, and it's so great because it just makes it real. And I think when you hear, even if they're not actors, even if it's just writers, when you hear other people reading your dialogue, you hear it. You know, just don't hear it, right? So, but what you said too, Mike, is I know a few. I know one anyway, writing group where that's really just what they do. And some actors come, you know, on Zoom, and some actors will read it, but sometimes it's just the other writers. So I think it's great for inspiring you, Diana, for that. You know, will it really impact
I think it can impact the pacing probably in some, because you can be like, wow, this is really the story itself. I don't think you're going to get a lot of notes on,
sure.
but you're going to get like, okay, this is dragging. Like I can
This
feel
scene's long.
that, like this is long, or like that didn't really hit like I thought it was going to hit. You know, I thought that was going to be a big thing, that moment, you know. So I feel like it's like more moment based kind of things that can be helpful for the read.
Yeah.
But how about this other question?
Absolutely.
So getting someone experienced to read your scripts, I mean, this is hard. You can take courses, you can pay for coverage. You know, there's different ways that you can submit to competitions and things. There's different paths, but it's you know, sometimes you have to pay money, or a lot of times you have to pay money, and it's I mean, it's not. I mean, that's why like a lot of times it has to do with networking, and you know, it takes time though. Like I moved to LA, you know, a year after college, and you know, built relationships over, you know, over a decade, coming up on 2 decades. And so it's like some of those people who were reading my scripts then weren't experienced, and now they're very experienced. So it's sort of, you know, some of these things are quicker things you can do, but that usually requires you paying. And there are longer term things you can do that involves, you know, building relationships and such like that.
You know, if I can jump in there, Mike, I think, because this is something, since I've been teaching about a year or two now, and I just teach, you know, my own course and whatnot. So, but that gets me amongst people who are exactly like you, Diana, and they're trying to break in, and they're what do I do? And what I found is that quite a number have, let's say, hired a script reader, and some you know, there's ones that charge a lot, there's some that charge a little, there's some very good ones like Pilar Alessandra, you know, is high level and she's going to give you good stuff, or Jen Crisanti will do you know, expensive workshops. I have found though that outside of those two who are wonderful, that a lot of the feedback they got were, you know, of students come in there, they said this, they said that, and they're wrong. And I'm like, that's terrible advice. Some of it just factually incorrect. So I'm very wary of script readers, like unless you're getting some of those really, really good ones. What I think is great, Diana, I and I'm not saying this because I teach a course at all. I think courses are good because when you get in a cohort, you know, it's been proven that you learn more by helping other writers than by having them help you. You'll learn more giving other writers advice. Now that's true for writers groups as well, but writers groups can be a bit funny politically. You know, writers groups are great. Maybe I'm talking a little bit out of school here, but sometimes writers groups can be a little bit competitive and people so writers groups are great. Just be careful, you know, make sure you're getting a good one. But I think courses are great for that, is that you've got time, because another thing is like you pay someone, you know, $250, $500 to read your script, and they don't have access to you. You know, when I'm working with a student, I got access to them. I understand what they're trying to say. I can be more like an editor and say like, you know, I think, you know, Dan, I think what you're really trying to say, like, have you thought about this? Where someone's just reading your script cold. So I think I would encourage writing groups or courses, and there's lots.
Yeah. Quickly on the last thing. You can register your film with the Copyright Office or with the WGA. There's not actually any legal thing with the WGA registration. Like it is. I mean, copyright, weirdly, you don't need to register it for copyright to apply. As soon as you
just
write
put
it,
the little thing there,
it's copyrighted. But like for kind of establishing a time and stuff like that, you can do things. It's good. It's pretty simple too. Of the two, I mean, I think like the Copyright Office actually has more legal like standing. And I want to get to writing, but there's one other quick, just kind of technical thing. How do you write a script to a one-sided phone call when you can't hear but one side of the call? How do you format it? James, you want to just tackle this real quick? I can think of 2 ways, one using parentheticals and one using action lines. What do you think?
And both are valid, right? I was gonna say the exact same thing. Both are valid. It's kind of like what your style is. I think I generally am not huge on parentheticals. I think people overuse them like crazy. Use them intentionally in the right way, but I do think parentheticals for phone call is pretty good. So I will often put into phone or something like that.
Yeah, you can say into phone, the name, the character, parenthetic. He asks it like blah blah blah. Are we going out tonight? And then in the parenthetical, you can have like pause or listens, and then okay. So what time should I pick you up? And then again, pause, listens, whatever. You can do that, or you can do the dialogue and then an action line. Maybe if you want to make it a little interesting, they're cooking as they're on the phone, you know? And so it's like, oh, what time I pick you up for the night, you know? And then they flip the omelet, blah, 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 you know? And so you're just like, something's happening. But basically
I like that version, what you just said, Mike.
Yeah.
I think that version's better, right? Because it's more interesting, right? Because they can be deaf on the page. They can be really boring on the page. So something like what Micah was just saying kind of makes it more visual. And then you can think about maybe an action that is maybe betraying what they were saying on the phone, if that's applicable. You know, they're trying to sound excited on the phone, but they just broke the eggs in the omelet and they're frustrated, you know.
Or
there's potential
the classic, I'm on the freeway as they're putting their shirt on in their house, you know, like I'm pulling up to the house right now, you know, and they're brushing like, you know, so you can definitely do really fun stuff in contrasting like what they're saying versus like the reality that they're showing. Oh man, so many great questions. We're gonna have another break to go through some more, but we got to do some more writing here. So we'll do some more questions after the break. Love seeing the chat, everyone being active there today. So we're gonna go into the big one now, the Goldilocks, the sprint, not too late, not too early. It's the middle sprint. It's gonna be 25 minutes. We're warmed up. Our brains have been thinking about screenwriting. We're just going to jump into it. So I'm going to put 25 minutes up on the clock, play some more music, and then we'll come back and we will answer some more questions. James, you ready to do a little more writing?
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's do it.
Awesome. Here we go.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of the middle writing sprint, the Goldilocks, the This Is Just Right sprint. Welcome to everyone who joined in that break. This is Let's Write Scripts. I'm Micah Craddy, the head of writing at Arc Studio, the perfect app for writing your scripts. Let me know how that writing sprint went. If you had any problems, any struggles, we're gonna answer some more questions. I have to say though, like first writing sprint is nothing for me. I didn't really do anything. I was getting warmed up. That sprint was awesome. It's so funny because like being on camera, I feel like everyone can just tell how my writing's going just by my facial expression, because I just like start getting very animated and like excited when I have an idea, and I'm like, ah! And then I like go. So I think I cracked some things. I'm working on this show, James. I'm developing this show, and it's sort of I had an idea and characters and a world, but like struggling to nail down what the story and the episodic engine kind of in that is, and looking, and then I think I made some good breakthroughs actually in that. So pretty excited.
Great.
How was
great? It's great to hear. It was really great for me too. Yeah, I felt like I got into more deep work. It's funny. I realized as I was typing, because I've never done this before, although I've shared offices with people, so I guess, but it's maybe someone well. I sort of say stuff I'm writing. Maybe other people do that too, but I'm like ever so slightly self-conscious about it. But so I was doing it. I don't know if it looked weird, but I'll say it out loud. So every now and then I was like, does this look weird? But I didn't care. I thought it's just great. Yeah, I really dialed into what I was doing. So yeah, this is great.
Fantastic. A couple quick announcements. Obviously, I host this show every week. Usually not with the guests, but loved having guests. But you want to join next week, same time, same place, Arc Studio YouTube channel, 1 p.m. Pacific on Wednesdays. We'll be doing more writing sprints, and I'll be answering questions next week. I know a lot of people we have who come every week, and it's a really fantastic community, and I love seeing everyone here. Another just quick thing I wanted to say, I mentioned a video that James had made earlier, and I've started making videos as well. I just posted one on Monday that some of you have probably seen about Parasite and the midpoint, and kind of
great movie,
lessons
and
to Parasite.
Great midpoint too.
Yeah. It's sort of how the Parasite midpoint works and what lessons you can draw from it. So you guys can check that out on the Arc Studio YouTube channel. I'm gonna have more kind of content along those lines.
I can't wait to see that, Mike. I'm sorry I didn't see it.
Now you know. Now you can. Yeah, you can check.
I'll leave lots of comments.
Be like really mean, because there actually are some mistakes I made, just like slight timeline, like reordering things. And I'm just like waiting for people to be like, actually, that happened after that.
Someone will pick it up. Someone will pick it up. Yeah. I know I had a mistake in. I was talking about Succession in a video, and I mistakenly put someone that was not a sibling when talking about siblings, and of course someone will point it out for sure.
Yeah. All right. Some more questions. Let's get into it. Wait, sorry. Where was I? James, how much time do you give yourself? This is a process question, James. I'd love to hear kind of your process. How much time do you give yourself for drafting? What is your process like? More outlining or just write scenes? I don't know if you're familiar with the terms, but are you more of a plotter or a pantser?
What's so funny, Micah? I actually did a video about that, and no one watched it, and I actually deleted the video because it was like sort of it's just stupid. I should put it back up. I really like the video, and I find it fascinating, plotters versus pantsers, right? And
if people don't know, it's people who do a lot of outlining in advance, who plot, or people who write by the seat of their pants, basically. It came from NaNoWriMo, National Novel Month. Yeah,
I find it's like a pretty even divide. But Micah, from being in writers' rooms, that TV at least will turn you into a plotter. You can't fly the seat of your pants in a writing room, because what does that look like, right? You're like, oh, shut up, everyone. I'm over here. No, you work collaboratively. You break the story together. So that'll cure you of any pantsing real quick, because you just can't work in a room if you are a pantser. So I started as a pantser, absolutely, fly by the seat of your pants. I didn't think there would be any way I could possibly work with other people. I thought it was just, but of course, once you get used to it, you love it. It's the best. So even let's say when I'm writing outside of a room, because sometimes you're not always in a room. You're let's say on a contract and there's no room.
You're writing on spec, maybe.
Yeah, or you're writing on spec. So that's where I might go if I'm writing on spec. I have gone without an outline. In fact, that pilot I mentioned, I wrote just for fun. It wasn't fun, but I wrote without an outline, and then I had to pretty much toss it and go back and outline it. So, because I'm so used to outlining, like it's such a part of my process. And I heard someone say discovery that
discovery writing
for me for me it's where I discover it is in writing the story. And I don't put dialogue into because I'm not a fan of the scriptment thing. I'm not judging. To me, I'm very
scriptment is basically a very, very well developed dialogue outline, right? It's like a script treatment in some sense. It's almost like you're just writing the script in novel form, kind of.
Right? Yeah. And to me, it's like the first, but if it works for people, that's great. So very long way of answering. I very much I love the outlining process actually, because it's pure story and you're still sort of writing not the dialogue, but you're kind of in a sense you are. So I love it. I see other people pathological plotter. I see. How about you, Mike?
It's interesting because you were saying the thing. It's like certainly we're in a room, where you're much more dictated, especially because it's like if you're writing an episode and someone else is writing the episode after, like there's logic. You can't just go off on your own thing.
Yeah.
If I'm writing, the longer the thing is, like if I'm writing a feature, the more of it's weird. I feel like it's the inverse of how it should be. The longer it is, I feel like the more I should be an outliner because like you don't want to mess it up because there's so much work. But I find, honestly, the answer is I'm right in the middle and I veer back and forth. I figure out, I'm more of a tent poles guy. I figure out my big sort of moments and where I'm heading. And then I write and then I'm doing some discovery in the page. And then after my draft, I also read a lot of drafts. I'm a drafter. And so I will write a draft and then it's a very labor intensive process that I have. It's not the best, but it's just sort of how my brain works where like you mentioned, you're just sort of discovery is happening in the outline. And I have some of that. I do a lot of free writing, but a lot of it happens in my revisions. And so I ended up doing a lot of drafts, kind of.
Yeah, so do I though too.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm getting the worst of both worlds. I'll do a billion drafts too. So I might be doing the worst of both worlds.
This is actually perfect transition. We were just talking about rewriting. How do you make sure your rewrites stay true to your original vision while working on the less clear kinks or other things that aren't working? I think this is really interesting because one thing I'll find, James, I'm curious. Oh, this is also James. Is that like there was a pilot I wrote, the last pilot I wrote, where like it was this weird thing where I wrote the first draft very quickly and it had this energy in it that I loved. And then I rewrote that energy out of it and it sort of became this lifeless thing.
Oh no.
And then it took me a long time to then write it back into it.
Yeah.
But I think that's partly kind of this idea of like staying true to your vision when you're rewriting. How do you kind of keep that vision in mind and stay true to that thing that was driving you in the first place?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, when you said that, that's happened to me too. I'm trying to think of when but I know that's happened to me.
Yeah.
And you know what's so hard too, and we're all going to experience this, is that when you're like Micah and I have written on TV shows where there's no time for that. Like you're not really going to lose sight because you got to move so fast and all that. But yeah, when you're working on your own scripts, that absolutely can happen. And I've seen that happen to so many people. I have seen it once or twice on TV shows too, where I won't say the writer's name, they're awesome, but it did happen where they just lost what made the show, what made the script so great. So that can happen. So what do you do?
Yeah,
that's a really tricky one. But something I was thinking about the other day, so I was leaving a comment for someone and on my channel, and if this helps, because it helps me, is that it's so important to finish the script, which I know it's not your question, but it's so important to finish the script, because I don't know if you find this, Micah, but I find, my wife's the same way, that I don't really know. I think I know what the script is about.
Yeah.
I think I do. Of course I do. But when I get to the end, I go, oh shit, it was really about this. And that, what is this? That could be my problems with a person in my life, or I really want to talk about redemption. And I haven't quite realized that. And then it sounds very arty-farty, but it's that realization that you can only get to the end, even if it's a vomit draft, even if it's a shit draft, you get to the end and you have that realization. And then with that realization, I go back and rewrite it. And then I'll do it again.
One thing I'll say just on that though, is that can be helpful is write that down. Like when you figure it out, like write it down like on an index card and tape it above your desk or something.
Yes.
Give yourself a North Star. Be like, this is what I'm doing. And then you can be like, oh, right. Like that's what I'm doing. You know, when I get lost.
And Patty Chayefsky did that, right? Apparently he would type down, I mean, he was a little bit dogmatic, but he would type down the theme on the typewriter, or he'd have it on strip paper, and anything that didn't talk about the theme, he'd get rid of it. You know, which sounds a little bit dogmatic, right? It doesn't sound a lot of fun, because you want to have fun when you're writing too.
Sure.
But absolutely. No, that's great, Mikey. Write it down, put it there. And it's like, and it's almost like a feeling, right? It's a theme, it's a moment, it's a thing, but there's something deep in your soul that you want, oh, this is what the story's about. And then that next draft I find is just heads and tails better.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is interesting sometimes you can find it in the first draft. I've had scripts where like it's taken me 5 drafts to figure out what it actually was, and then you feel very dumb. You're like, how did I not know this? Like in the first
right? Because it seems so obvious. You're like, how did I miss this? I know it's so crazy.
2020.
But then we have to remember that the writer of Little Miss Sunshine, I've forgotten the writer's name. He was interviewed, and I think it was Michael Arendt or something. He said it was like 50 drafts or something like that before he figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's a lot. I think I would maybe I might lose my enthusiasm after that.
Yeah. Well, speaking about losing enthusiasm, man, these questions are leading right into each other. How do you stay inspired about a script you're writing? Do you ever get bored with the story? And does that mean you simply might want to write something else? I think this is a great question, because there is a very delicate line between I just don't want to do hard work and this isn't working, right? Like, because the grass is always green. It's always going to be easier to start another project. So maybe James, tackle that one first. How do you know, do you have any ways of knowing whether it's just you're just kind of tired or that the thing isn't working?
That is the $1 million question. I'm really thinking about that one. How do you stay inspired about a script you're writing? Do you ever get bored with the story? Does that mean you simply might want to write something else? Yeah, that's a tricky one, because I'm not fortunate in many ways in terms of my brain. In many ways, I'm my own worst enemy. But I do have this bloody mindedness where I'm just going to get it done. So that helps me. I'm just going to get it done. So that's one thing I'm a little bit happy about. But I have seen, obviously, know lots of writers, as you do, Micah, in forums like this. I worry a little bit about, does that mean you simply want to write something else? Because that could be a little bit of self-sabotage. And look, writers, we're the masters. The inner saboteur, writers are the best at it. So I think that's one of the things in your toolkit you want to really start watching yourself on, because I don't know, Pamela, maybe you're just sick to death of this script and you should move on. Also, by the way, go back to it. A lot of writers will bounce back and forth between 2 scripts to avoid that fatigue. So maybe that's the answer, right? Maybe that's it. So I'll just to finish the inner saboteur thing, just make sure you're not doing that thing where you're getting bored, but it's like you really are kind of just not finishing it. Yeah. You know?
It's always okay to take a break, I'll say. One thing, and that break can be take a shower, go for a walk, or it can be putting it in, like, I put in 6 months in a desk, and then that's literally the script I just finished was and the pilot I just finished. Those were both spent 6 months in drawers, metaphorically, because I just couldn't do it. And then I loved how they turned out. So I will say that will happen. I also say, though, in terms of staying inspired by the script you're writing, one thing that's very helpful is, because I think I was talking about this last week, about like someone asked the ratio of ideas I have to the scripts, like how many ideas get turned into actual finished scripts. And I said, I do a lot of thinking and pre-writing and free writing early on, so that by the time I'm actually in script on something, I am pretty convinced of it. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm pretty convinced. So I will say most of the time, if you do a lot of work before you're actually in our studio, interior, etc., blah, 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 you'll have sort of already proven a little bit. And there are a lot of opportunities where it could have died up to that point as you're figuring out the story and outlining and brainstorming and free writing and all of that. So that can really help to do that kind of work.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally agree. And I just thought of two more things. One little trick that I do is I'll have a script that I use, and I wish I had one handy. I don't. That's like my template script. It's almost like, again, it's a bit arty-farty, but I'll find a script that I really find inspiring, and I'll print it off really nice. I know it's bad for the environment, but I'll print it off really nice and put it in a nice little binder or a little folder, and I carry it with me everywhere, or it's often right here. But if I'm going to be going to a coffee shop, I'll make sure I've got one with me. And so there's just something about the comfort of that. But then what I'll do is I'll read that script to get started. And it might be the first 20 pages or something like that. And it helps me reconnect to what it is that I'm excited about. You know what I mean? So that's a little trick I do, especially if it's something I'm a little bit maybe more intimidated by or feeling a little bit out of my element. So and there's certain scripts I'm obsessed with certain parts of, for example, the movie Sicario, and this is before Taylor Sheridan turned out to be kind of a weird dude, a bit problematic, but the first 20 pages of that script are some of the most amazing, dynamic, exciting, and I just love it. So I'll read the first 20 pages of that, but I match it to the script. It's almost like having a playlist, people have Spotify playlists. I do that too. But there's something about the script that is just a little bit more. So I think that's something that helps me stay inspired.
That's awesome. Let's do a couple quick craft things. Or one thing is, before we do the final sprint, I just want to share this, though. Richard couldn't find a writer's group, so he started his own. And I have to say, oftentimes the answer to how do I find a writer's group is you start one. And way to go, Richard. That's awesome. A couple quick craft things. How do you introduce a large group of characters if your scene is a large event?
Great question.
Yeah. Quick things I'll say, you don't have to meet everyone all at once. You can meet them a few at a time, and you only need to meet them when you need to meet them. So have the story tell you, this character I now need to meet. You could do that. One other thing I'll just say quickly is have them doing something. If you walk into a room and everyone's just sitting down and they're just kind of sitting there and you're going to meet them all, it's going to be hard. But if it's more dynamic and everyone, when you meet them, they're sort of doing a thing that helps define their character, then that can also help. James, any things to add?
No, what you said was perfect. Absolutely perfect. And I'm glad because I saw that in the chat before, and I wanted to make sure we talked about that.
Awesome.
That's the exact perfect answer. Can't add anything to it.
Great. Perfect. Here, you want to take this one from Amy? How do you feel about noting Act 1, Act 2, etc. in scripts these days?
Amy, if it's a film, don't do it. Period. End of story. Don't ever do it in a film. But if it's a TV show, yes. And I'd be very curious to hear Micah's take on it. I still think that even if you're working for Netflix, I worked on a show for Netflix. My wife's a show coming up on Netflix in the winter. They still, even though there's no commercials, they still put act breaks in it. They still say end of Act 1, Act 2, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because it's pacing. And it forces them when you don't do it, it's so funny. I've seen it where it just starts to sag. So I don't know if that's what you're asking, Amy, but in a film, never, ever, 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 ever. But in TV, you will see the occasional, if you download scripts, which I recommend everyone does, of course, and read scripts, it's the best thing you can do. You will see some, let's say, HBO Max shows where the script has no act breaks in it. And obviously they know what they're doing and stuff, so they're fine. But I really recommend that all TV writers, even if you're writing for a Hulu or a Netflix or aiming to, still put the Act 1, Act 2 in there. That's my feeling. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I I'm not. I think I mostly agree with you. Yeah, in movies you don't do it. It's really difficult because actually very little of the stuff that I come across has act breaks in it anymore, and it really has changed. I do think structurally you should still think that way, whether or not, like, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Definitely, it so helps to have that in your script. You don't necessarily have to have them in there.
Yeah.
If you're writing, I would honestly go, it's almost like if you're writing something that's more, if you're writing a sitcom, yes, you should have them in there. You should have cold open, act 1, act 2, act 3, teaser, like that's format. If you're writing a procedural thing, like an NBC cop show, that kind of stuff, yeah. If you're writing, more of a streaming cable show, I personally wouldn't. It's just stylistically, it's sort of changed.
It feels a bit funny, right? It feels a bit fuddy-duddy.
Yeah.
And you know what? I realized it too as he spoke, Micah, that I misspoke. My wife, who's got the show on Netflix, they take them out. They put the acts in there as they're writing, and then they take them out before anyone sees it. So I think that
makes sense from what I've seen in terms of like it as a structural thing as you're breaking the story. That's very helpful. But sometimes people are a little weird now about seeing act breaks in things, and
it feels old-fashioned, doesn't it?
It feels
it's true.
A little bit. Let's try to do one more question, and then we're already running. How are you doing on time, James?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Yeah.
Cool. All right, here we go. This is a good question from Jay. I think we can dig our teeth into this one. Can you overthink structure? I really dig my story, love my protagonist, love my setup, big midpoint, but I feel like I'm spending a lot of time stressing over the first 30 pages. I don't know. It kind of feels like maybe there's two questions in here. The question took a little twist at the midpoint, which is always exciting when there's a twist at the midpoint. But let's maybe take this one at a time. James, do you think you could overthink structure?
I'm like a big plotter, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I don't think so. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. What do you think?
Here's the thing. I think you can't. I think there's different ways of thinking about that. Not necessarily, like my first answer would be like, no, I don't think so. But I think you can be misled if you're trying to like fit your story into a predetermined structure. If you're using some sort of beat guide or template or something, and you're like, oh, my story isn't hitting this on page, the X, and that kind of thing. Yes, I think you really can. Those things can be very helpful, templates and stuff, but those were all created after the fact to describe stories. And so they can be inspiration, they can be guidelines, but like they're not formulas. It's not like you don't have to match up with that.
Yeah, because there's always going to be diversions, right? Even from the great movies are going to be like, oh, they didn't have a refuse the call, or they didn't have some of these things. I think they're super helpful, but yeah, totally agree. And I think maybe that's what Richard was trying to say, right? Is that if you're trying to find like Save the Cat, a lot of people dump on Save the Cat. I think it's kind of fun for people to dump on it, but I actually think there's a lot of good stuff in Save the Cat. But what I don't like about Save the Cat is page 10 is this, page 12 is this, that's kind of dumb. But the beats themselves are solid. They're really solid. If you like, you read it and you go, yep. That's how most stories work. But, I like to think of it as a recipe, it's a recipe. So obviously the more advanced you get with a recipe, a great chef can go into a kitchen without any recipe and make you the best dish ever. So that's going to be like that for writing. If you're like you really know your craft, you're kind of beyond that stuff, but you've internalized it. You've internalized the structure. You've internalized all that stuff. So, but I think that's what Richard was asking, right? It's like if you're not at page 10 by the theme stated, and one thing about Save the Cat too, I will say parenthetically, is that you talk to development execs and they are sick to effing death of Save the Cat because you can see it. You can see it because suddenly on page 8 the theme is stated, and you're like, so that's the problem with some of these formulas is everyone's doing them. So
I will say though, being stressed out over the first 30 pages is not a unique problem, Richard.
I was going to say everyone does that. Yeah.
Rewriting, like I rewrite the opening so many times, and that's
you can tell
fine.
sometimes the first 20 pages are so good in a script, and then you're like, oh, what happened? You know what I mean? Because it's like this polished diamond, but we all do it.
You finally nailed it, and then
nailed it.
Then maybe you didn't have the energy to go make the rest of it fit. That's great. Jamie's asking a question about structure. Is a 3-act for half hour or 1 hour or both? So, I mean, 3-act structure, what I was talking about is for a half hour, like a sitcom, which is 3 acts, but it's actually kind of 5 acts weirdly, because you have a teaser or a cold open, which is like, if you think about like The Office, right? It'll start with some random funny gag that doesn't really have anything to do with the story. It was literally just like, oh, we're going to laugh here. Then you have a 3-act structure. And then there's sort of like a little tag or like an epilogue on the end. Hour longs are going to be more like 5-act and 4-act kind of.
And some people do 6. You know, I find for like when I'm teaching, because I have my pilot course, and so it comes up a lot. Because like a lot of shows that I love, and I think a lot of people love, are like The Bear or Barry. The first couple of seasons, or a lot of those. And there's tons of them. Hacks, which is like a 35 to 40 minute dramedy. So and Barry can be an hour. Everyone's favorite episode of The Bear was an hour, but for the most part, I like to. I think especially when people are learning, is even if it's 35 minutes, 40 minutes, I still go with 3 acts, a 3-act structure, just for the rhythm of it. And 1 hour, there's a slightly different rhythm. And if you're trying to decide, so many people too, I find, are deciding, is this a 30-minute show? If it's a dramedy, let's say, like in the vein of a Hacks, is it a drama? Is it a comedy? Or The Bear? There's all the controversy about The Bear. Like, it's not really a comedy, but if it's fast paced and there's jokes, then go shorter. Brevity is the soul of wit, right?
And honestly, I'll find sometimes you get it wrong when you're figuring out if it's a half hour or an hour. Like a friend of mine who sold a pilot recently, he wrote it as an hour, but then they paid him basically to rewrite it as a half hour. The last pilot I just wrote, the first draft was a half hour, and then it became an overstuffed half hour until I finally was like, okay, sorry, this is actually an hour long. Like this is more of a drama. And that's kind of fun. Like, this is all fluid. Everything we're talking about, like everything can change. Like you be open to it, be open to the better idea, be open to the better structure, the better approach. I mean, I think you can still keep that thing we talked about earlier, that like, this is my guiding principle. This is what I'm trying to do here. But like in service of that, everything else can change, I think. Particularly if you're writing on spec and this is just your thing you're doing yourself and you're just trying to write it. All right. So we need to get into the last writing sprint because we've been talking a lot. It's been fantastic. Great. So I mentioned earlier, one thing, James, I do on the show is the sandwich of the week. I just show a photo of the best sandwich that I've made that week. So without further ado, this is the sandwich of the week. It's going to be featured at Chomp, the Sandwich Festival. Ciabatta, turkey, avocado, pickled onions, and sun-dried tomatoes. Coming to you, to your stomach. Yeah, this was like a solid. I would say I'll give this a B. Not like the most dramatic sandwich I've made, but a really good one. James, are you a sandwich guy?
Am I ever?
Yeah.
I really, yes, I love a sandwich. I'm obsessed with sandwiches. Love them. Although, unfortunately, because now I'm a boring vegetarian, so I can't have, because that looks so good though. And that's one time I miss meat. I'm good with meat, but a sandwich, God darn it, a great turkey sandwich, that looks amazing. It
is the thing, because I actually have been trying to eat less meat, and weirdly lunch, I don't know if it is weird, but like lunch is actually the meal that I struggle with. Sorry, I like Juno's, the Chomp d'Or. That needed a shout out. Appreciate that, Juno. Lunch is, this is nothing to do with screenwriting, but lunch is the meal that I struggle the most to eat non-meat things with, because it's just like I need some protein in the middle of the day, and like I just don't know what to do?
That's
Like, what do you
where
do for lunch,
egg
James? What's your-
salad. Well,
yeah,
I
but
do
what
like,
like?
so I do have fish. I do eat fish, so I will have
Okay,
a
that's it.
nice
Yeah, I
tuna
will do
salad
that.
or a
Yeah.
nice egg salad. So
Egg,
but
okay.
I eat too much tuna salad or egg salad because it's the only thing that's going to scratch that itch.
That's
Although
my thing
sometimes
too.
just a nice cheese sandwich, sometimes a nice cheese sandwich,
All right.
you know, with some nice spreads and lettuce
Okay.
and things.
Yeah.
But I feel like I listen. You're the Obi-Wan in this situation. You know what I mean? You're the sandwich Obi-Wan. I love a sandwich, but I feel like I don't know, I'm Luke Skywalker and Yoda or something. Like I feel like I'm really learning some things today. There's something magical about a sandwich. I don't know what it is. I just
It's
love
great.
them.
It's
Right?
it's one of the most perfect food delivery systems ever. Sorry, this was last week's sandwich. I'm just show off a little bit.
What do you think, Michael? What do you think about a nice sourdough bread on a?
I got some sourdough in here somewhere. Oh, oops, jumped ahead there. We're gonna jump. Don't worry, we're gonna jump into the sprint really quick. I love a good sourdough. There's a
right. Oh,
there was a while where like or this is like a well, to me. I'm just showing
I'm
off.
getting so hungry.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're gonna do one more sprint because of this. Anyways, all right. But this is great. Guys. Thank you so much to the chat, everyone. We're going long today because just like so many good questions and so much good knowledge here being shared by James. But we are gonna jump into the last sprint here, and because we're running late, we're just gonna do a 15-minute sprint that'll take us to about the top of the hour, and then we're gonna go on our way. I just want to say. Douglas, there's like a local bakery that I get my bread from in LA. It's like these hipster dudes and they're really cool and their bread's very good. I also spend too much money on it. But it's like my vice. It's like I don't have a fancy car or anything. I don't travel that much, but like bread.
There's no better.
Good
Listen,
bread.
if it's wrong to love a sandwich, then I don't want to be right.
Exactly. Guys, please join me next week on Let's Write Scripts, 1 p.m. Pacific, same on this channel. Check out James's stuff. There's links below to his website and to his channel. He's got some really cool videos about just like great craft issues and discussions there. I love it. And if you have to leave during the sprint, please say goodbye in the chat. Let me know how your writing went. I love seeing y'all here. Hope to see you. Hope this is just the start of your writing practice this week or the middle of it because we're Wednesday and you're writing on. But James, you ready to do one last sprint?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. 15 minutes on the clock. Catch you guys on this side for And that brings us to the end of the third and final writing sprint, which means we're at the end of Let's Write Scripts for Wednesday, June 25th. James, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This was so awesome to have you here and for sharing your wisdom and your insights and your energy. I hope you had a good time and got some good writing done.
Both. Yeah, I had a great time and I got some really good writing done. In fact, I think I might have to come back sometime.
I would love
I've been more productive this afternoon than I've been.
Man, I would love to have you back. And I think the audience would also love to have you back. I want to thank everyone who's here watching this live or watching a replay later because you just wanted to make your own little writing session. Thanks for your question. Thanks for your energy. Again, join me again next week. And yeah, until then, be kind to yourselves and happy writing. James, do you want to share any final words of wisdom or encouragement to our viewers?
Well, I love what you said. Be kind to yourself. You know, the world is there's so much negativity out in the world. So I love that. Be kind to yourself. You know, we're our own worst enemies, you know. And hey, I'm sure you've talked about this book before, Micah, The War of Art. If anyone
no, I haven't.
Oh, it is a great book. If you are the sort of writer, and if you're a writer, you do struggle with self-sabotage, negativity in your own head, procrastination, all those things that bedevil us. The War of Art's a great prescription for that. I sound like I don't mean to sell a book. I got no benefit from it, but it's a terrific book. It's written by Stephen Pressfield, who is a great writer as well. So he's a writer. And so I highly recommend that. And it's all about what we were just talking about. It's about negativity and about resistance. So he takes resistance and he externalizes it. Anyways, everyone do themselves a favor. It's $20 and it'll really help if you struggle with these sort of issues. So yes, be kind, keep writing, stay awesome, and stay loose. You know, I always remember it's fun. It's got to be fun. If you're not having fun, then it kind of shows up on the page. So
definitely. All right, everyone.
Thanks so much, Mike. And thank you, everyone. I loved it.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Farewell, and hope to see most of you or all of you next week, everybody. Until then, peace out.